Excellent. I just want to do a quick roll with all of you, just to make sure that everyone's here because I can't see your faces, so I can't know for sure. David, are you here? Great. Eileen? Garrett? Great. Helen? Wonderful. Raymond? Excellent. Awesome. Okay. That is me kicking my phone to the ground. All right. So we are meeting together to talk about and to work on college applications, which I know can be something of a scary thing. It's part of why I got into this business because I know that it can be sort of scary, and I sort of want to ameliorate some of those troubles and talk about and work on essays that are fun, because I actually am a deep, heartfelt believer that this process should be fun, because it's about talking about what you care about, managing to write pieces that are about why you do the things you do, why you think the things you think, why you care about the things you care about. And while doing that kind of work can still be quite difficult, there's no reason why it should be as excruciating as people make it out to be. Does that make sense? Okay. A couple of things about myself. My name is Josh. In the class, I'll just go by Josh. We don't have to worry about last names and all that. I am a graduate of the University of Chicago, where I studied English and theater. I was basically a creative writing major. I did a lot of work both in playwriting and screenwriting, as well as in fiction and nonfiction. What we're going to be talking about here, and the way that I consider this class is, it's a nonfiction class. It's a class on writing personal essays. And if your experience is anything like mine was at your age, you probably haven't read that much nonfiction. Perhaps some of you are avid podcast listeners, or sometimes pick up the New Yorker if it gets delivered to your house for your parents. But many of you probably haven't read creative nonfiction. And I think it's an interesting place to think about towards the beginning of this process, because that is the sort of work that we're going to be going for. We're trying to write creative nonfiction essays, personal essays that have wit and style and don't necessarily fit into a box, the same way that some of the essay writing that you may be used to from school tends to. So I was an undergraduate at the University of Chicago. After that, I decided to pursue an MFA degree, a master's degree in filmmaking from Columbia. So that's where I'm now. It's not literally where I am now. Right now, it's the summer and I'm home in California, but I'll be back in New York in a couple weeks. But that's what my story is. I'm a storyteller. I was doing theater in college, and I'm doing filmmaking post-college, but I'm most interested in storytelling and how to tell effective stories. So that's why I teach this course, because it's what interests me, and also I like to help students who are trying to find their voice, trying to find their way of expressing themselves, and talk about their ways of seeing the world. So that's why I'm here. I imagine that's why you're here, to write those applications. And with that being said, I would love to open up the syllabus for the class. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask, do one of you have any burning questions that you want to ask before we dive into the nitty-gritty? Okay. Well, if not, then we're going to take a look at the syllabus. I'll pop it up, and we'll get started. Okay. Da ba da ba da da ba da ba dee da ba da ba da ba 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 bee. Okay, so this is the syllabus for the class. I hope you all can see it. I'm just going to sort of read through it. I know that you all can read, I'm sorry, but I just feel like in order to make sure that we're all on exactly the same page, I'll work through. And then if you happen to have any questions about anything that's here, we're going to talk about it. So this is the college essay writing workshop. In this class, we'll study and practice the form of the essay. The essays we read and write here will be considerably different from essays you're used to writing or reading in school. At this early juncture, I want to scream rather loud so you hear me. Essay writing should be creative and fun. At its core, this is a class on storytelling. I believe that very strongly. It should be fun. There's still parts of it that are going to be hard, but at its core, if it's not fun, we're getting bogged down in the anxieties, which isn't helpful for any of us. So, in this class, you'll learn how to write compelling personal narratives and develop strategies for telling true stories from your own life. For a moment, forget about trying to satisfy what colleges want to hear, because the real best strategy to college essay writing is a very simple and straightforward one. Figure out a story from your life that means something important to you and write it. As it happens, that's what the admissions people want to hear anyway. You give them what they want by showing them what they've never seen before, why you are awesome and specifically you. I promise you can do this. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I imagine you will be no exception. You can learn how to write compelling stories about who you are, where you come from, and why you are what you are. We're going to have a good time with this, and I'm determined to make this process feel approachable and even fun, because it should be. This is a workshop course, which means most of the text we'll be reading come from you and your classmates. You will submit works in progress, which we will help you revise together. We'll also be reading essays about essay writing that I have written, college essays from some of my past students, and some of my favorite pieces of nonfiction essay writing by professional writers. You will finish this course with a complete and polished common application and draft work for your first few supplements. I should say as an addendum to that, only if you stay on top of your work. There's going to be a lot of work that you need to do outside of class. We will only be meeting here once a week, and I will have rather high expectations for the amount and quality of work you complete in between sessions. In order to get skilled at college essay writing like any other skill, one needs to stretch the muscle a lot. Since everyone works at a different pace, I can't make any quantified expectations of the anticipated amount of time you'll spend, but please just treat our class like it was another school year class or another job or another extracurricular. Treat it seriously. This process will demand a lot of thoughtful attention from you, and you're going to be stretching these storytelling muscles quite a lot. The good news is, if all is going right and well, it should be fun. Okay? So, are you all with me so far? Does anyone have any questions that they would like me to address before we continue onwards? I'll give it one extra moment while I grab a sip to drink anyway. Sure? Everyone good? All right, then we're moving on. Okay, to the nuts and bolts of the class. Here's a breakdown of what you all should expect. First, at the beginning of the process here, you'll complete the college essay questionnaire. You'll also complete a list for me of the schools that you intend to be applying for. I should say now that I make no judgments based on the list that you all have put together. It doesn't matter to me any further than like I care about what you care about. So if you happen to have the Ivies and commensurate schools on your list, good for you. If not, again, it doesn't matter to me. I want for you what you want for you. So it's really about finding whatever is the right place for you, whether that be one of those schools or many of the other really excellent schools that one can find throughout the United States or internationally. I want for you what you want for you. At the beginning, you'll complete the college essay questionnaire and that school application list. Please answer those questions as honestly and thoroughly as you can, because you'll likely be returning to the sheet often for future materials. It can be a really good place to go to develop new essays. That's when, at the very beginning of this class, then you'll start working on your first draft of the Common Application essay. For this piece, you can choose to adapt one of your answers from the questionnaire or write something else. Whatever you choose, write something that matters to you. Write something that you think will entertain your fellow students. When in doubt, what I say is, write about what you would write about even if it weren't an assignment. You all have 17 to 18 years of life experience, and I'm sure have had some really interesting experiences, either personally or with family members or with your friends, or have something interesting to say about a philosophical issue or a class or an idea. If it interests you, that's what I want to hear. And that's what the college admissions people will want to hear too. The first draft of the Common App should be 500 to 800 words. That's about 2 to 3 pages double spaced. It's okay if it still needs a lot of work or it's missing stuff. That's what an early draft is like. Do your best and just get it in. Please submit your work for this class, 12-point font double spaced, and always submit your work with your name on it. It can get pretty complicated for me because I teach about 4 or 5 of these classes during the summer. So part of the way that I stay organized is making sure that I always have the names lined up. So please, please, for my sake, do that. And that'll make all of our lives easier, actually, because we'll get to it. But everyone, you should be reading each other's work. And it's a lot easier to stay organized if your name is always there. So please, please, please. The Common App you'll turn in autumn will need to be 650 words or less. I know that I say 500 to 800 for those early drafts. My students usually think when they begin that that's a lot of space, but you'll find that once you've developed a lot of material, rather than 650 feeling like a lot, it actually feels like a little, because there's going to be a lot of material that you have to stuff into less space. So we'll get there, but I just sort of want you to know that. Please try your best not to feel daunted. It's really not that bad. So you'll submit your first draft to class for workshop, and after workshop, you'll revise into a second draft and so on. And by revise, I really don't mean mess around with a few words here and there. Sometimes the notes that me and your fellow students will give will suggest a complete reworking of the piece, in which you'll alter the focus or ideas, you'll delete or add entire new sections, you'll be revamping word choice all over the place. Writing is rewriting. Many of my students in past years have gone through 5 drafts of their Common Application. Ideally, as you get further along, the level of edit goes from big to small, from the concept to the idea to the sentence level to word choice. We're going to get through all that together, but it's why we're getting started so early now. It means that procrastination can happen in June as opposed to November, which feels horrible. And a little bit of procrastination in June will live. Next comes editing. You'll edit every one of your classmates' drafts. Each edit consists of 2 parts. First, in your paper edit, you'll look through for the usual stuff that you've probably dealt with when you do peer review in high school classes, looking for ways that you can improve syntax or structure, places where there's spelling mistakes or things like that. It's sort of just like the close paper level stuff. What you should know from me is that if you ever receive something from me that has a lot of word level edits, like at the sentence level and the word level, that means you're doing really well. Because I try as much as possible to do a funnel shape in terms of my editing, where I start thinking at the concept level, then the idea level, then the sentence level. So if you're getting a lot of edits that are close to the surface, that means that your ideas are really, really strong and already there. Because I don't think it's worth bothering with those, you misspelled this thing here, if we don't even have the idea in place yet. So I want you guys to have that in the back of your head as we get further along. The other thing that I'm going to ask of all of you to do is to put together a critique of the essay. Just jot down some notes when you read through your the work of your classmates, thinking about what's working, what isn't working, what's confusing to you, and any suggestions that you have for their future drafts in order to make it the most realized version of itself. When you do that, be as specific as possible. I had a nonfiction writing teacher in college who I really admire, whose wisdom I often pass along. Positive comments deserve the same amount of scrutiny as negative comments. That's to say, to tell someone, it was good, is no more helpful than saying, I didn't like that. And I want to compel you all to get really good at analyzing when you read something. Not only this was bad or this was good, but being able to say in a very articulate way, what is the thing that is functioning effectively? What is the thing that is not functioning effectively? So it's not just good. It's the way that you use your word choice here is highly effective in giving us a sense of who you are. That your character comes through the voice of the essay. That's good. The constructive criticism you give will likely echo some paper edit comments, but should also have idea level thoughts. Your edits for peer writing are as important as your own writing. I believe very strongly in this editing process because great writers are great editors. They know how to express why great writing is great and know how to solve problems in writing that needs work. The best way to get better at revising your own work is by becoming adept at fixing the problems of others and then recognizing how to combat those problems in your very own work. So that's one thing. I really believe in editing, and though I'll be a little bit lax about how much you actually literally turn in papered edits for your classmates, I expect you to have notes ahead of time. That way, when we sit down together, they have a lot to think about. Okay. Another way to become a great writer of essay is to read great essays, which, if your experience in high school is anything like mine was, you haven't. We'll be reading some work by my past students, reading some of my own materials I've developed specifically for this class, as well as essays by masters. These last literary examples will not look exactly like college essays because they're not written to get into colleges, they're written for other purposes. But they serve as models for how personal essay writing can work, how it can be creative, and how it can be great. Many of the literary essays I've selected are about immigrant experiences and racial identities, because I found that my students often write about these experiences for college applications. And the examples I have given here do a nice job of thinking about immigrant and racial issues in ways that are specific and unique. To those of you who are wondering why we are mostly reading literary nonfiction as opposed to more college essays, I say go ahead and read those books on your own time if you want to, the 100 best acceptance essays or whatever it may be. Though they may be helpful, I actually tend to be wary of them because I worry that these pieces are liable to produce bad copycat writing, that not plagiarizing, because plagiarizing is awful and you cannot do it, but like even just the act of sort of getting anxious and thinking there's one way you have to do it, which is the furthest thing from the truth. To my mind, the only thing that the best college admissions essays have in common is that they could only have been written by the person who wrote them, because they are that specific, they are that unique, they are that tailored to who that person is. So if you can read them and go, wow, that's a really great way of expressing voice and being a singular identity without getting caught up in maybe I should try and do that. Maybe it'll be helpful to you. I think it just can produce unwarranted anxiety. But you are to do as you will, and it's none of my business. So I, in this class, mostly have you read work by great nonfiction authors. We talk together about why their writing works and how you can apply the lessons you learn from those pieces. The most important thing in my mind is for you all to develop your own personal system of what works for you and to exit this class ready to tackle the rest of your applications head on. So, with all of that being said, which is yet a few more things, does anyone have any questions, any burning thoughts, any things they want to discuss? Are you sure? Okay. All right. At the end of this class, all students should leave with a completed, polished Common App essay, as well as material for the next few supplementals, a developed skill set in nonfiction essay writing, so that each of you feel equipped to complete the rest of the process, an appreciation for the nonfiction essay as a literary form, and hopefully discover a few new favorite writers along the way, written work that you are proud of and new perspectives on writing, and a community of peers to approach for writing help, a network of people to exchange writing with throughout the rest of the application process and beyond. When I taught this class last year, there were a couple of students who actually stayed in touch and helped each other through the rest as they went through the fall, writing all of their supplements. I hope that that might happen in this class too. I think that there's kind of no substitute for having a peer friend who is working on the application work who you can sort of share and bounce ideas off of. Because to my mind, there are multiple audiences for one's writing, and it's really useful to get peer suggestions before it gets in front of sort of teachers, whether that be me or that be your English teacher or that be the college admission person who ultimately reads for a given school. Ultimately, that's our audience that we're thinking of. But first, it's good to have the help of friends. I think it's a really great way of having someone in your life who can hold you accountable, mutually accountable to each other, right? So, a couple of course policies. Attendance is really important. We only meet 10 times, and a lot of the work we do in class is workshop-based. I'll be giving lectures in many of our meetings, and these are easily saved to video if you miss a class. I have a link. There's going to be a Google Doc that I think is already up that's going to have links to the videos for all of the classes that I'll upload afterwards. So if you want to go back and review or you happen to miss a class, that's a place you can go. But much of the editing that happens in class cannot be replicated at another date. We can try to have a makeup editing session at some point this summer. I've actually set aside class 9 as sort of a catch-all. I think I called it the workshop session to rule them all because I have a thing for Lord of the Rings. But generally speaking, please, please, please try to be present. Editing workshop time is not very easily made up, and it's your time. It's the only way to ensure you get the most out of the class. So let that be known. Respect is essential. When you critique an essay, you must do so respectfully. Always critique the writer, not the person. I know that this may be the first time that all of you have been in a writing workshop, but there's a particular way that they run. This is the way that creative writing happens commonly in both college workshop formats and post-grad workshop formats. This is what I've been doing at UChicago and Columbia. We have a room full of people. You come in with new written work, and we all sit down and talk about what's working and what isn't working. But it's a very personal space because it's really hard work to do, and sometimes students write material that's very personal to them, perhaps quite sensitive to them. So when people in class write about those serious or difficult parts of their lives, um, the stakes are high, and we should honor them. We should be kind to our fellow students when they do that, and give them credit for talking about difficult things if they happen to. But no matter what, just giving them credit. Writing is hard, and everyone deserves praise for doing it well, and respect even when they fall short. Plagiarism is completely unacceptable. Always. You all know this. You've been in high school for 3-4 years. This is obvious enough. You're telling your personal stories, so don't tell someone else's. But if that weren't enough reason, plagiarism is increasingly common among college applications these days. So colleges have databases that they check things against if they have any doubts. And if colleges catch any plagiarism, they notify other colleges. You don't get in anywhere. It's totally horrible. There's no reason to do it. Just don't do it. On a similar note, accepting help from your parents and others is great, but be cognizant of the line and don't cross it, because everything you submit should be yours and in your own words. Colleges want to hear your voice, not mine, not your mom's, and not your neighborhood florist's. So please seek out as much help as you can find. Essay gets a lot better when it's seen a lot of other eyes, when other people have been able to give input. But ultimately, it's your call. It's your work. So, hit your deadlines and proofread. When you submit essays for this class, your peers are going to put in a lot of work, as I will, into reading, analyzing, and editing. Turn in work you're proud of. Turn in work you've checked for spelling and grammar. And turn your work in on time. If all else fails, please turn your work in on time. I ask that drafts of work for the class be turned in 48 hours before, so that your fellow students have time to read and comment on your work before class begins. We'll usually be meeting on Sunday evenings. I think we have a couple of classes that meet on Wednesday. When I say 48 hours, you don't have to take that literally. Basically what it means is if we're meeting on Sunday evening, it needs to be in by Thursday night, which is to say, did I just miscount that? Yeah. Needs to be in by Friday night. Needs to be in by Friday night, which is to say, when we all wake up on Saturday morning, we should see it in that folder and be able to go take a look. So do what you need to do to make it happen. But for all of you who have procrastination problems, it does need to be in before we actually meet, or else we won't have the time to read it ahead of time. So one more time. On Sunday, it needs to be in by Friday night, which is to say when we all wake up on Saturday morning. If we meet on Wednesday, it needs to be in by Monday night, which is to say whatever magic happens to happen when we wake up on Tuesday morning, we see it. Does that sound good? Okay. So now is a time that I actually sort of need everyone to participate a little bit. Because we need to work out who is going to be in which workshop section. Did we get our sixth student? Did our sixth student join us? I didn't hear the sound. Do we have two Raymonds? Okay. What can we do in order to keep our Raymonds separate from one another? Because we're only going to see the black screen. Raymond, whose last name is not Feng. What is your last name? Great. Okay. What I think we're going to do, if it's okay with all of you, or if it's okay with both of you, is if one of you goes by Ray F and one of you goes by Ray Z. Is that okay? Awesome. Great. Almost makes you sound like a rapper. Okay. So, what I would love to do now is I would love to get us all set in our workshop groups. We're going to be meeting 10 times across the summer. As you see over here, it's not highlighting. I am klutz. Okay, 4, 6, 5, 7. So, in the middle of the class, there are going to be sessions where only half of the class will go up for workshop. That way, everyone gets enough time to have their work workshopped and discussed. Are there any of you who know that you won't be here for any classes? If so, I want to make sure that you won't miss one of your workshop days. Oh, yes. Sorry about that. One sec. Okay. That's those middle days at a glance. Do you all have a link to the drive? Because I realize that I think I have some of your parents' emails. Ah, I see. David, would you put your email in the box right now so I can add you to the drive? This will just be a second. You should have a link to it now. And David, I'm going to make a personal folder for you, but I'll do that outside of class hours because we should continue on. That makes everyone but Garrett. Garrett, have you been able to access? Okay. All right. So not a problem. My pleasure. I'm sorry for the miscommunication, the trouble. Okay. So after class today, I think I'm going to do a little bit of communicating with all of you to make sure that I actually have the right list when I send out the Zoom. But we can sort of save that for the last 10 minutes. I want to spend a moment right now just having open forum before we enter into the second part of class today. Does anyone have any questions is there anything about the essay process that is giving you trouble that you're concerned about that you sort of want to talk about right now before we keep going? Yeah, David, shoot. Let you're unmuted. I can. Ah, maybe not. Go ahead and type it if I can't seem to unmute you easily. Go ahead. Yeah, David? Yes. Okay, David. Um, so we're going to be submitting, I thank you for that because I wasn't clear. We're going to be submitting drafts 48 hours before. You aren't going to be obligated to turn in edits 48 hours before. The idea of 48 hours before is so that everyone in the class has a chance to look at everything. You don't have to turn in the edits 48 hours before. You keep them for when we're talking in workshop. And if you happen to write up ones that you can send, you go ahead and send them. If you just do them on paper, then you make sure that you talk about them when we get to workshop. The idea is just so that there's enough lead time for everyone to have an opportunity to read your work. So, does that make sense? Does anyone else have any questions? I have one other thing on that front, if no one else does, and then we'll get moving with a little bit of getting to know you. Okay. Sometimes students want to write about sensitive issues for their common application or for supplemental essays. I talked about that a little bit briefly a moment ago. I just want to say, if you happen to have something that you want to write, but that you don't want to share with a class, I would understand that, and feel free to send me a message privately and we can talk about it. But what I will say is that I find that it can often be really helpful to have the input of class members because they usually have really good ideas for other things for you to think about. I mean, I've been doing this editing work for a long time, but I am just one perspective, and having the help of the whole group can be really instrumental in making one's work better. So I want to say at the outset, if you have things that you don't want to share with a class, that's okay, and I totally understand. But I hope that we get this class to be working so effectively that you will feel comfortable bringing in whatever you have to bring in, because we're here to support you. So, with all that being said, I think it's time to jump into one of the materials. Did all of you get an email ahead of class with those couple of documents that I sent to the parent, Michelle, our class organizer? Did you all receive that email? David, did you not? There it is. And our other Raymond Fang, did you receive it? Okay. That sounds like a no, and that is okay. I usually assign a couple of those materials as the first assignments after the first class. So if you've read any of those ahead of time, awesome, super, you did great. You won't have as much homework to do for next class. Otherwise, if you haven't, I'm going to assign them today. But we're going to jump over into the readings. I would love to know if all of you actually have access to this folder right now, because if you don't, I want to make sure that you do, because I want you following along and typing things up as we're doing this. Can you all follow me on your own computers to over here. Can you open up the drive, get to class materials, get to readings, get to college essay materials? Please let me know if you've gotten this far. When you have, then we will continue on. And that makes 6. Fantastic. You all are totally on top of this. All right. So for next class, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to read these two, the parlay and the essay on essays, as well as a couple of materials in the past college essays folder. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up one of your pieces of writing work that I'm going to expect for you to do for next class. You're going to need to do the school application list and the essay brainstorming sheet. For now, we're just going to open up that essay brainstorming sheet. I suggest you all open up the Word document version so you can edit it for yourself. But go ahead and download it to your own computer. That way you aren't editing the one that's up in the folder. So if you can open up this document, get it open on your computer and be looking at it in Word or Pages or whatever is your program. I'm going to open it over here in the PDF. And when you all say, give me the thumbs up or the yes or the whatever, we'll keep going. Is everyone good to go? Please tell me if you are struggling. Great, that looks like everyone. Awesome. Well, then we're going to get started. So now's the time to actually, we're going to take ourselves off of the mute function, or if we're having trouble with the volume, you can just type things out. This is a good way to get to know one another. And this is, okay, let me sort of explain why I've done this way. Some of you, I imagine, have already visited the Common App website. I find it to be anxiety-inducing and a chore. They have either 6 or 7 questions. They are sometimes they feel a little bit buttoned up to me, like a penguin suit or a tuxedo, and they don't bring out in me the feeling of really wanting to write. And one of their questions anyway is create your own question if you have something else you want to write about. So I actually usually start over here because it's one further step removed from the sort of scary anxiety part of the process, and just sort of starting in what you actually need, what you actually want. So these are my questions. And I'd love to have people just volunteer if they have answers for them. What do you do and why do you do it? Someone want to share? David, I'd love to hear it. Hi, all on mute. How do we fix this? All participants are unmuted. It says. David, go ahead, try. David? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you.
Hello?
Hello, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Give it a
All right.
shot.
So something I do is playing the clarinet. I've been playing it for, I think, 7 years now. It's quite a while. Honestly, the reason I do it is music is just something that I enjoy. I started playing before. I playing an instrument every year since then. And it's just music is something that I really like. And if I take a break from studying and all that. So.
Do you belong to any performance groups with music? An orchestra or a chamber?
Yeah, I play in my school band. I also do marching band.
I missed that last bit. What was that?
I said and
Your sound is cutting in and out, which is unfortunate. Um, that's a really great place to start, though. Clarinet is a great answer. You have favorite composers? Are there specific things about the clarinet that makes it a particularly interesting instrument to play?
can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there was really a time to start fifth grade. I think I wanted to play the saxophone, and clarinet was started playing clarinet. I just stuck with it, and it's got a very wide range, so it allows flexibility, and it can also play really loudly or really quietly. So it's just an all-around good instrument, I guess.
Awesome. That's a great and interesting place to start. Uh, Someone else like to share? What do you do and why do you do it? I will get around to all of you, so there's no use hiding. Okay, Raymond, go ahead. This is Raymond Fang.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm actually pretty similar to David. Uh, Playing the piano, I was 4, and since then, music has been one of the biggest parts of my life. So why I do it? Well, because I love music, and for me, it can allow me to express myself. Can't be described particular words. It can allow me to connect with other people who also enjoy music. So yeah, in a really big part of my life, I have experienced all that I've had through music.
Nice. That's really excellent. We're gonna maybe talk as we go forward about specific experiences with piano. So you all know, I'm a musician as well. I play the piano, guitar, and ukulele. And in college, I did a bunch of a cappella. So I did a bunch of a cappella composing as well. It's so fun. Music is the best. Okay. Is there someone else who'd care to share?
Does it have to be for the first question, or can we answer a different one?
Let's start with the first question, and then we're going to work our way down. To me, it's a way of getting to know people's extracurriculars and stuff like that right off the bat. What do you do, and why do you do it?
I guess I can go next. This is Helen, by the way.
Good. All right.
So for the first question, one thing that I do pretty often is I teach free coding, like computer science class for younger kids, typically in elementary and middle school. I actually I founded my own like I gathered a bunch of friends who were also interested in this, and we started organizing like monthly places, and we advertised to people about that. And I've been doing this for more than 2 years. I thought, well, I used to be like a paid instructor for teaching similar classes. I realized that it was something that people like me and other high school students could organize our own companies. So we decided to do it for ourselves, like as a volunteer project, and decided.
That's really cool. What an cool and industrious thing to take on. What do you do at the beginning to start teaching classes in computer science? Is there a language that
Sorry, I can't hear.
I'm sorry. What are the couple of skills that you begin with? What are the things that you start with students with? And then maybe what computer science language do you start with?
We started with the simplest thing we can do. I chose to use Scratch, which is basically drag and drop code, but you can use it to make simple code like animations and games, and that thing can be pretty complex if you want. So I always start with that, and the first few classes were similar, where I advertised to kids through 6th grade, and I always like pre-prepare a project, and a set of instructions and like lessons to go with it for each class. And but after like started getting bored of Scratch. We still continue with Scratch, but we wanted to explore with other languages as well. So I've also started Python and like actual coding languages, and those are for slightly older students. And I'm trying to maintain three of the classes going on at the same time. So lately I've also been recruiting more volunteers and trying to like promote people to be officers and stuff, so we can all share the responsibility a bit more.
I hear that. It sort of thing can get overwhelming pretty fast. That's a wonderful answer. What I particularly like about that is that there's a certain skill set and, forgive the pun, language or languages that come with computer science. And it means that you're an expert in something that it's very likely that your reader won't be. And you can introduce them to something new, and that's quite exciting.
Thank you.
I know most of my friends in college were math and computer science people. I was like the stray English major. But it was funny. I would be hearing about Python and HTML and All of it, all the time. And I'd be like, here I am trying to make big words spelled right. Anyway, who would care to share next? Is that you, Ray Z?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So I really like swimming classes to younger kids. So swimming was like one of the things that I first started when I was really young. So, and part of the reason why I really wanted to do this was because I actually struggled with it quite a bit when I was learning and almost quit. But I'm glad to like recreate the positive environment for kids who are learning it now, and it's really nice and encouraged to see some of the weeks and really become more comfortable.
I like that a lot. That's really wonderful. Good for you. And what I would love to draw attention to, Raymond, is one of the strongest ways that you can begin a personal essay begins with admitting one's own shortcomings or something like that. So the idea of beginning an essay that's about teaching swimming with the idea of I almost quit swimming myself because as a kid I couldn't stand it. That's a really interesting place to start for the arc of a story. There's probably a lot that you can work with there. I'd be excited to see. All right. We've got two left. We've got Eileen and Garrett. Who would care to go next?
I can go. This is Eileen, by the way.
Yes.
One thing that I do is it's kind of like what Helen did. My friends and I started a music club this year at our school to teach music to underprivileged kids at elementary schools around our district. And yeah, so we just started that this year, and it's really cool and fun to do it because we had our first concert a couple of weeks ago, and it's really nice to see how far the kids have come in a couple of months and how a lot of them really have the opportunity to do that. So.
Do you live in a place where music education has been significantly cut for schools?
Yeah, it does. It usually doesn't start until middle or high school. So elementary school kids, they don't really have the opportunity to learn music that much.
That's crazy. Well, that's really wonderful work that you're doing then.
Thank you.
I'm just taking down a couple of notes on that at the moment. What are you teaching them in these classes? Are you orienting toward classical, toward modern music, towards jazz? What are you doing?
We're actually have three. We're doing piano, ukulele, and guitar right now. I think next year we might do drums or violin or something like that. But right now, three music, and we'll, I guess, get keyboards and get little ukuleles, stuff that we were able to get for the kids to keep.
Huh. Who are the composers who you teach, or the rock and rollers? I mean, I feel silly saying composers when it could easily be the Beatles. Yeah, what do you teach?
I guess we did like some classic songs like Ode to Joy and Star, kind of little fodder because it's to make it easier for the kids to play.
Good. Okay. Well, that's totally awesome. That's a wonderful thing. And again, if you can build a story around it, which it sounds like you probably can, it'd be a wonderful thing to write about. Totally wonderful thing to write about. Garrett, what you got? What do you do, and why do you do it? Oh, you don't have a mic. Yeah, go ahead. You can write it out. That's fine. Oh my God. Amazing. That's so cool. Do you do a lot of work in film production? I would say so. I've been a script supervisor quite a handful of times for student films, and it is complicated, particularly at the student level, because everyone is still figuring out how to do a lot of it. So I feel like a lot of onus particularly falls upon the script supervisor to keep things organized. Why do you do it? What do you like about being an actor and script manager? Garrett, what was something that you, oh, yeah. Oh, totally. I agree wholeheartedly. There's something about finishing a good scene that it feels really great. Awesome. That could be a really interesting thing to write about too. I'm excited for all of the things that you all have to say. All right. So now that we've gone through and sort of done this with everyone, what I'm going to have us do is we're going to walk through the essay brainstorming sheet in whole. And if you have something to share for a particular one, feel free. If you don't, we'll skip on over you. The idea of what we're trying to do right now is this. For every application process, you're compelled to write a common application of like 650 words. But after that, there are all of these supplementals that you have to write. And sometimes it can feel daunting. How am I going to answer all of these questions? And the way that you do it is you sort of realize that in one essay, there's no way to tell every bit of who you are. So you do a little bit of yourself this way. You do sort of like, because I can't speak to who all of you are yet, I'll do a little bit of musician Josh over here, a little bit of theater Josh over here, a little bit of history buff Josh over here. That way, the full application gives a bunch of different snapshots of who I am. You all should feel compelled to do the same thing for yours. You give that little bit of yourself over there, but that little bit of yourself over there. And the idea of this brainstorming sheet is to come up with a couple of different avenues that you could go down for essays so that when you finish with a common app, you have ideas of what you can do afterward. And also, if you're struggling to figure out what to write for your common app, now you have a couple of, by the end of today, hopefully, you'll have a couple of different options. And if you don't, then we're going to talk. Because by the end of today, I want you to have a few different options. So, I open it back up to the group. What's your obsession and why is it important? I will call on people if you don't just have an answer yourself.
I have an answer for this one.
Name it.
So there's something that I used to be obsessed with last year, and it's something MBTI Myers-Briggs typology indicator. Has anyone ever heard of that?
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, really cool. But it's basically like personality type. So it's like a little bit of psychology, controversial because some people say they exist and are like magic. Some people say it's basically like astrology. There are 16 personality types based off of like 4 different traits of like how you're and to predict things like how people like react to certain events or how people process and and I was really obsessed with learning all about it last year because I'm really interested in psychology. The reason why MBTI was really important to me was because I really wanted to like get to know people better. Like I've always been like an introvert, and I didn't have like a ton of friends. Like I have close. I was always who had 15 friends and stuff. So I've always been really curious about like how people's brains work. So I think why I really MBTI last year.
That's a really great answer. I hate Myers-Briggs, but it totally follows my Myers-Briggs. I'm an ENTP, and so like I had a couple of friends who were obsessed with Myers-Briggs who were trying to get me to do Myers-Briggs, and I was like, I finished it, and I was like, but this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. And then you can't know who someone is by some test. And of course, the ENTP is the questioner, the one who like doesn't believe that something like these could be decided by some test. And they threw that in my face, and I didn't hear the end of it. That's a really interesting avenue. You should consider it. MBTI would be a great thing to talk about. Have you taken psychology courses? Is it an academic area of interest for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in taking classes, but I have not taken any actual classes on it yet, simply because my school doesn't really have like that many choices. Besides MBTI, I've also delved into a few other like types of personality indicators and more broadly like other psychology books and that kind of.
Cool. That could be a really fun thing to write about. One of the things that I end up discussing when we're further on in the process is how finding alternative structures to essays can be quite rewarding. And to write the Myers-Briggs essay, it very easily comes in 4 sections. It's about those 4 parts of the personality and then some other story at the same time. There's some really interesting structural things that you could do with that could be a lot of fun. So feel free to start, think about it, whatever it may happen to be, but that could be a lot of fun.
All right, thanks.
Does anyone else have an answer for this question? What is your obsession and why is it important?
An obsession, more of just like an interest. But like up till last year, so it's not year, hit not something that I was particularly interested in. I just found it very boring, and even we were basically forced to read the textbook, and I did not enjoy it at all. But then good, and part of it was because of our key to look at history as just history, but to also be able to apply it to what's happening at now. And I just find it a much more interesting topic now, and uh, I think it's really cool to see how the like have something similar happen, and also just try to predict what's going to happen. Yeah.
Do you have a particular interest in history? Is there an era you like to study? A location globally you like to study, or what's your bent?
Yeah. So was revolution where all the people had their heads getting cut off. I just thought that was like for some reason. And Bonaparte was he was able to conquer a lot of land, and it was interesting just to see what he did all that in like an entire country and keep control of it, I guess.
So feel free to jot down your notes on this. You could absolutely write something really interesting about revolutionary French history. Heads will roll. That's quite interesting. That'd be awesome. Anyone else have an obsession they would like to share? Why it's important? I have an obsession that I would like to share, not because I have to, but because I want to demonstrate the fact that one of the things I talk about a lot in this class, and that I want to be in your heads as we go along, is about specificity. That the most interesting stories to tell, the most interesting pieces of knowledge, all those, it's about specificity. And were I to be held with my feet to the flames, what's my obsession? Today, my answer would be that I'm obsessed with the Phil Spector girl groups of the early 1960s. There are a couple of these bands. Their names are the Ronettes, the Crystals, Bobby Sox, Darlene Love. There are these recordings by these early 60s girl groups that have perhaps the most amazing production ever, music production on them ever, done by Phil Spector, who was a very famous producer of the time. He was a master of these mono recordings, and they have this amazing sound that has all of these layers that are happening on top of one another, but nevertheless, the sound is crystalline clear. It starts with a voice, and then by the end, you have like all these trumpets blaring and the string section, and there are these big, overwhelming compositions, but nevertheless, they don't feel overwhelming. They feel complete. And I really admire musical storytelling that manages to be that full while still being very clear. So were I to answer this question today, that's how I would answer. But I want you to think about, perhaps you have an obsession that you wouldn't necessarily think is academic, but if you dig hard enough, it kind of can be, because all deep, deep interest in some way is intellectual, because you've probably given it a lot of thought. So with that being said, are there any other people with obsessions they would like to share? And they could be strange, because you never know where that road might take you. Do you, Garrett? What's your obsession with technology? Okay. What do you follow tech news for? Oh, that's an interesting answer. Do you study artificial intelligence? Is it a thing that you read about, write about, or trying to learn about? Read about it a lot. Okay, make a note of it. It is an incredibly interesting topic. Absolutely. Um, what's the big? What's the brink that you're talking about? What do you think that we're going to accomplish soon in artificial intelligence that's going to change everything? Go specific. What could AI accomplish in the imminent future that would be something big? Yeah, self-driving cars are interesting. I'm really excited to see what happens when they fully get off the ground. I mean, I know that there are a lot of functioning cars right now, but that like completely unsolvable problem of insuring them, because like you can kind of hold a person responsible when a person crashes a car, but when a self-driving car gets into an accident, what in the hell do you do? Garrett, that is a valuable line of thinking to go down. Consider consider if you want to write about AI, which I think could be a really interesting thing to talk about. Figure out what your perspective on it is. What could AI be doing? What should AI be doing? Um, what to you makes AI so important, and specifically you? Um, that's a great idea. That's a really, really great idea. Um, uh, okay. I want to open this one up to the whole group again. What was the thing that only you noticed? What was the thing that only you did? Someone have something to share on this? Is this a harder one? Are folks struggling with this one?
Different from what the question was asking. So it's actually something that I was person. Is that all right?
I had a little trouble hearing you for half of that. What was that,
Okay.
David?
It was like a situation to do something.
It could be. It could be a situation where you do something that no one else has the guts to do.
Okay. Um, so the thing is, I can't ride roller coasters at all. I'm afraid. Uh, I went to an amusement park a couple years ago with um, some of my friends, and all my roller coaster that was there, and they were all like, "David, come ride with us," but I just can't ride with this. I can't do it. I was the person that didn't go on the roller coaster. So that was the thing that it was like.
You know why you can't ride roller coasters?
I don't know. It's just a fear of heights. Also, stomach is falling out of your body, and it's just.
Are there any other like thrill-seeking activities like that that you consciously avoid?
Say that I guess I don't really do anything that's that crazy. So yeah, I tend to be a little. I guess.
Is it just a fear, or is it also a David version of common sense?
What do you mean by that?
You guys will learn this shortly. I'm often not great about answering questions directly. I often answer questions with anecdotes. It could be a David version of common sense to not ride roller coasters or thrill-seeking activities. In my own life, I don't know how to ride a bike. People make fun of me about it reasonably often, and I just use it as like grist for the mill when someone's like, it's so easy, it's like riding a bike. I'm like, I know, I can't do it. But when my dad taught me, he sort of was pretending to teach me, but he was actually, I think, mortified because he had a near-death experience on a bike when he was a teenager. So I think when he was teaching me to ride a bike, he seemed to be teaching me how to ride a bike, but he really wanted me not to learn. I've since talked to him about it. He's like, that's interesting. That seems reasonable. All of which is a very roundabout way of saying, is there a part of you that's like, the fun that I would have on a roller coaster is not worth the potential risk?
I don't. So roller coaster. I don't see why I would ride them.
You don't see the point.
Because I find riding fun. So.
Is there something dorky or strange which you get that kind of thrill out of instead of roller coasters?
I mean, reading books, I guess. That's not a very popular thing anymore, but and I really have time to something that I enjoyed a lot.
What was the second half of that? You said reading books and...
I said I don't really because school is really busy, but it used to be something that I enjoyed a lot that other people.
What kind of books do you read? Who's your go-to author or genre? One more time, please. I'm sorry, the sound is...
Yeah, sorry about that. I said my favorite.
Can you actually just type it into the type box? It's happened a couple times now. We should just cut our losses. Could you write it down in the box? I'm sorry about that. Oh, that's so great. Okay. So David, I don't want to put words in your mouth because this is all your process to figure out, but you have just suggested one of the most interesting and strange personal essays I have come across in a while. David, you could write something really lovely about I won't ride roller coasters. Friends go, I stay watching them. No reason, no reason for my stomach to fall out of my body. No, when I'm looking for exhilaration, I read historical romance novels. If you started an essay that way, you would have your audience's interest so fast. I would love to read that essay. So if that's something you're interested in writing, find your words, find your ideas, and tell the story. But that could be an incredibly interesting piece. Okay. Does anyone else have an answer for this that they would like to share? What was the thing that only you noticed? What was the thing that only you did? Anyone have any answers for this, or shall we move on? Okay, well then we'll move on. And that's for the best, I suppose, because David's answer is so good. Okay. What's something that you often say or that you ardently believe that people are surprised by? Does someone have an answer for this that they'd like to share? I will call on you if you don't volunteer yourself. Who is that almost saying something but not? What's something you often say or that you ardently believe that surprises people? It doesn't have to be academic. Like, for instance, if I were answering this question, and if you're interested in seeing my answers to this question just to see how silly they can go, my answer for this is Richard Nixon. I'm a huge fan of Richard Nixon. And I would even consider writing about that in a college essay. At the time, I'm not sure I would have, but looking back on it, I think I actually would have. I think that for all of the bad things that he did, for all of the ways in which he destroyed the American presidency forever, he has perhaps the finest environmental record of any president. The things that he accomplished under his time as president are huge. What he was able to do in terms of establishing regulations on gas emissions, holding companies accountable to those sorts of problems, establishing Earth Day. There were all sorts of things that happened under Nixon's reign that have done that have been massive strides in protecting our Earth. So how about you? What's something that you ardently believe that makes the people and your friends go, WTF? Can I hear from Raymond Fang? Raymond, is there something that you believe that that surprises people?
Yeah, I'm not completely sure, but I do have a really silly answer, and
That's what I like to hear.
that is that I find cheese to be one of the most disgusting things that.
Really?
Yeah.
You hate cheese.
Yeah, the only time I will eat cheese is if I cannot take.
Huh. Are there times that you've had to very carefully avoid cheese, or that you've been forced to have cheese and it's been a disaster?
Well, I mean, living in America, it's like very hard. If not at home. Yeah, it's very hard to like make sure you don't have cheese in your food or something. Yeah. I've had some experiences where I eat cheese and like once it goes in my mouth, it like I'm unable to I don't think, but
Um,
yeah, it just happens.
So forgive me if this is my own cultural ignorance, but how much when your parents cook their traditional food, do they use cheese? Is this a cultural thing?
Oh, we definitely, yeah, we cheese when we cook at home. Yeah, it's just not something we eat regularly.
Huh. So you don't eat it much in the house, but like out there in the world, cheese is frickin' everywhere.
Yeah. Right.
So this may be really silly, but I think it's worth considering. If you were writing a piece about what it's like to have a Chinese ethnic identity within the American world, this could be a very interesting, specific, and unusual place to start. I don't know if it'll yield fruit, but it would be an interesting thing to think about, because as what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an idea. Yeah, it's possible.
If nothing else, it's a good reminder that even the most silly answers can actually yield something quite serious. Does anyone else have something that they believe that surprises people? Oh, David. Yes. I mean, the answer is your political views. This is a safe space for that. What I will say about that is that the college application process, political views can be a little bit dicey, because you don't know who the person who's going to be reading your essay is going to be. And there are definitely, there is definitely a perceived and probably true liberal bias to the people who you can expect to be reading applications. So there are things that one might decide to be careful about when applying to a given school, and be thoughtful about in terms of who you think is likely to be reading your work. But with all of that being said, this class is a safe space. So if you have certain political views that appear in your work or that you want to share, you're absolutely welcome to. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I mean, I both want to say that this is a safe space for whatever your perspective happens to be, and that I'm not sure whether all admissions are going to be as sympathetic to that perspective. Are there other people who have beliefs that surprise people? Yeah. Okay. Well then, let's keep chugging along. Here's my plan. We're going to do a few more of these questions, and then I expect that you all will take a look at this list on your own. But the real idea is that by the end of class today, I want you to have like 3 or so ideas of things that you might be able to go forward with in order to write a common application. That way, some of the anxiety is off. So, is there an object that you own, ideally a mundane or strange idiosyncratic object, that carries great significance to you? Helen, do you have an answer for this one?
I need like a moment to think about this.
I would like to compel all of you, again, it doesn't matter if it seems silly at first. Some of the most profound things to write about start in a place that's very odd and specific and strange. Were I writing about this one, I would talk about the collection of pet rocks that I collected during my semester abroad during college. I was all over Europe, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of stuff. So instead, what I did was, in every city I visited, I collected a pebble or a small rock, and I would name it after a famous person from that city. So in Austria, I picked up a pet rock that I named Wittgenstein. And in Berlin, I picked up a rock, and what did I name the Berlin rock? I might have just named it Wally. And when I was in Liverpool, I named my rock Ringo. And when I was in Warsaw, I named my rock Lech Walesa, after the leader of the Polish Solidarity movement. I did this because I wanted to have sort of a memory of my time in Europe that would be something physical, a collection of rocks. So that's something that I own that's kind of mundane but carries great significance to me and reminds me of when I was 20 and all over Europe. You have an object that
Oh, yes.
yeah.
I have, this is different, but it's connected to like a single memory from my childhood or anything like that. But I have like stuffed like Barney, like from the TV show, that I got. I don't even remember, but it was from like I've had it since then, and it's always been sitting on my bed, like even today. And like I think it's normal to have like on your bed as like a kid, but then after a certain age, people generally get embarrassed and things around really affected me. So, and this also relates to like one of my other potential essay ideas. I feel like really not really embarrassed by anything. And I don't know if that's like something worth writing about.
That's a really interesting topic. Is it related at all to your Myers-Briggs?
Maybe. I thought I had like really strange personality like characteristics, which was also why I was interested in learning about personalities. There's like a connection, but I don't think they would work in the same essay or anything.
Okay. So you're very difficult to embarrass, or it's hard for you to feel embarrassed. How does that manifest in your life?
I was actually saving this for one of the later questions, but like the one about being really bad at something. I am running. When I was in middle school, I was like in running, and it's supposed to be more embarrassing because I'm also really tall. So like when you're tall, aren't you supposed to be faster or something? It didn't work that way for me, and I joined like cross country, even though I was already the slowest person in my and none of my slow friends were there with me, so I was like actually last place. But I continued with cross country, and after seasons were over, kept long distance running by myself to today. And I think that's like my strongest potentially.
You have a lot of endurance as a runner.
Yeah.
Huh. That's a really interesting topic. That could be a really great one to write about as well. Helen, I think that's a really interesting idea. I want to point you in the direction of, I'm not remembering which bullet point it is right now, but if you haven't read the parlay already, or if you already have, think about that section that's about, I'm really terrible at baseball, so.
Yeah, I read it. That was why I thought of it.
Cool. Yeah, because I think that that's the construction. If you think of that construction here, you can come up with something that will yield fruit. Like, I'm the slowest person in my class, so I joined the team. I improved, or something that has to do with the idea of, though I may be the slowest person, I also have the most endurance. So I fall multiple laps behind, but by the time the race ends, I'll have caught back up because I can keep that slow pace the whole time. That's quite interesting. I love that answer. I also love the idea of still having stuffed animals on the bed. There may be something really valuable to that too. Does someone else have a couple of an answer or two they'd like to share about an object for them? Raymond, care to share?
Sure, yeah. So it's kind of similar, but I have this like blue blanket that I've since I was like 4, and it's sort of like in the beginning it would be big enough to cover me entirely, and then later on it'd just be something that was soft and I liked having around. Now it's just a couple like pieces of cloth that are connected by a couple of strands. So it's kind of like maybe it is time to go, but I still just keeping it around, even though it doesn't really have any practical use anymore.
Who gave it to you, or who made it?
I think in the very beginning it was my grandparents gave it. So that it was one of I wanted to keep it with me for so long.
Is the person who gave it to you, that grandparent, someone who's quite important to you in your life?
Yeah.
That could be a really valuable avenue to explore as well. That is why we keep things like that. That's why we keep blankets that have grown way too small to use as a blanket, because of some sort of sentimental significance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a blanket like that, but one of my sisters does. That could yield fruit too. I'd be very interested to hear. Does anyone else have an object they would care to share? I feel so silly. It's sort of like being at show and tell, but like with adult students who like have really complicated thoughts and ideas and perspectives about the world. You have a coffee mug. Yeah, Garrett, I'd love to hear from you first and then from David. What's on the coffee mug and who's the close friend? I see. Is it because you're a G, or is it because it's the first letter of your name, or both? Okay. Without getting into stuff that is too personal, what did you help her get through? Is that one of the things of your life, that you're the sort of friend who ends up being in this supportive place for his friends? I see. Oh, wow. That's quite significant. That could be a valuable thing to write about. It may be worth talking to her to see if she's comfortable with it, but as long as you keep her name private, you could perhaps write something quite moving and powerful about being that kind of supportive friend. That could be a very valuable thing to write about. David, what would you care to share? Okay. What's the secret significance of the water bottle? Have you lost your water bottles everywhere, or has it been the exact same one? You've managed to keep the water bottle while everything else disappears. Yeah. The Dread Pirate Robert water bottle. Have you all seen? Have you all seen Princess Bride, or does that reference just like? Okay. Princess Bride. It's a phenomenal movie. Y'all should see it if you haven't. But basically, there's a character named the Dread Pirate Roberts, and the best movie I've ever seen. I agree. It's like the greatest movie ever. Without giving too much away, the idea is there's this pirate named the Dread Pirate Roberts, and sometimes when the Dread Pirate Roberts decides to retire, he passes on the name to someone else, and no one ever knows because he wears a mask all the time. So it's like your water bottle is the Dread Pirate Roberts. It continues on in the vein of the old one, and no one ever knows. It's because it's a water bottle. What's the funny story from 8th grade? Oh my god. Naturally. You had to go to school the day after the last day of school. Oh. Oh, that's awful. Okay. I want to focus in here a little bit, David. Do you play a sport of some kind? Is there some reason in particular why you need to have a water bottle around with you all the time, other than the fact that hydration is important? How's it been drilled into you? Who's drilled that habit into you? Is it your parents? Is it your own idiosyncrasies? Okay. I think there's yeah, that sounds like parents. This could be a really fun thing to write about. If you want to write an essay that's about the values that you've learned from your parents, sometimes there's an essay topic that asks you to talk about someone who has made an important impact in your life, some sort of knowledge that they've passed on to you. And this could be a really funny way to start that essay before getting to something more profound if you want to talk about the values that your parents have instilled in you. It could be a fun way to start before a piece that gets more serious. If that's interesting to you, you could consider it. That's really funny. That's really funny. I love that. Carry a water bottle everywhere. Why? Because it's my parents' rule. Oh, that's great. Okay. So we are coming towards the end of our time. We have another 30 minutes. I'm not going to go question by question anymore. I will. If you have something that you really want to share and talk about, I think this is a really good time to sort of like get that off your chest. That way, by the time we finish today, you'll be able to jet off and start writing about something. Because these are my expectations. For next class, I believe we're going to be meeting this upcoming Wednesday, the 20th. Let me ensure that is true before I say it. Yes, we'll be meeting again in 4 days. I'm going to ask of all of you to read a handful of the materials and also start to work on a common app. What I call it is, I call it an It Exists draft, because that is the level of scrutiny that we are bringing to it right now. I will be satisfied. I will clap for you, as will the rest of your classmates, if on Wednesday you bring in the first couple hundred words, essentially a word vomit on something that is of interest to you that you sort of want to broach as a possible topic. Then for the next class, you're going to turn in a full, true It Exists draft. But for the meeting that we meet on Wednesday, I just want you to bring in something, just a first pass where you throw something on the page so that we all have something to talk about. No, you don't need to turn them in tomorrow night. For now, the 48-hour rule is not in effect. It does not give you guys enough time. What we're going to do is on Wednesday we'll show up, and either you all individually for each one, or I will read all of them out loud, and that way we don't actually have to read them ahead of time. We'll workshop them in class and in class only. That's a really good question, David. I hope that sounds reasonable to all of you. I really want to be as clear as possible. My expectations for those drafts are not very high. My expectations are that you do something. There's plenty of time to turn in the thing that's perfect. For now, my expectations are something. So, with that being said, let's bounce back to the brainstorming sheet, and we're going to pull through these a lot faster, and then we're going to call it a day. I'm going to leave about 5 or 10 minutes at the end if you have any lingering questions. I know that we're starting quite a process here, and I want to give you some time to chat if there's anything lingering. But this has been really great. I'm really satisfied with all these answers that you're giving, and I'm so excited to be doing this with you throughout the day. So, let's bounce back to it. What can't you do? When did you fail? What are you bad at? And how has that made you great? Does someone have an answer they'd like to share? One person, say something. You can't tie knots. How do you know that? Were you a Boy Scout who fell behind the others?
No, so it was a physics project. It was our first lab of the year, and length of string or like yarn that we had to tie in a circle, and so I was tying one of the ends, and I just couldn't and then it would just immediately fall apart again. So tying knots has never been my strong suit.
Fair enough. Are you okay? I'll just let that go. Great, good answer. Challenge, great or small. What's the hard bargain that made you super? Before anyone answers this one may seem a little strange, and I want to sort of just describe what I actually mean by that. You know how most superheroes have an origin story? How, like, Batman was like attacked by that well of bats. And I'm not even sure if that's like what gave him the powers, but like whatever. It's like there's some sort of traumatic experience in their past that did some sort of damage, but through the act of going through that ordeal, that person came out on the other side with some major quality or skill. When I was applying to colleges, I happened to write an essay that was about my parents' divorce and the ways in which it forced me to be more mature at a younger age than I otherwise would have had to be. I had to be more responsible because of that challenge of mine. Does someone have one that they would care to share, some challenge that they've overcome that has made them super?
I have an example. This is Helen again, by the way.
Great.
Not the same because it's not something that randomly happened to me. It was definitely something I for big mistakes and I learned from it. So would that count as like a challenge?
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to hear essays about people who've made mistakes. It usually comes off with modesty, and we believe more what they come forward with as the way they are now because they've admitted to their shortcomings. I'd be really interested.
In 6th grade, I don't know how to explain it, but in 6th grade, essentially, I ended really, it's like not bad as in I got an A- when I was expecting an A, but bad as in like objectively bad grade. Because I didn't know the content or I was dumb or anything, but it was because I was really into like stuff and I stopped paying attention to classes. Really interested. Then that wasn't the main problem, but my main problem was like finding motivation, I suppose. Because I didn't end up in the classes that I wanted to be in. Like I ended up in like regular like levels when advanced class, and part of the reason was because of like some registering problems that I had the previous year. Like I didn't know how to, like I felt like I wasn't in the best that I should be. Me to like lose a lot of motivation, and like I had problems with organizing stuff and but I find to not lose my homework and that kind of thing. And I also like didn't so like interest intention to like language arts and social studies. So that was like from grades change my habits of school was definitely a huge part of like my struggle in middle school. I'm sure out to like a good college essay idea, but it's definitely a major part of my life.
And it's a valuable thing to think about. I think that most successful people in whatever stripe they happen to be, what your definition of success is, I don't know. But like most successful people have been faced with a moment at which either they totally royally screwed up and then decided to get back on the straight and narrow, or had the moment of actually choosing for themselves, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. Because I think it's not truly hard work or dedication or perseverance unless you've failed or you've chosen it over the alternative of working less hard. Right?
For me, I think like it was definitely a unique experience, I guess. Like it was the first time or at least the first time significant to me that I faced something supposed to so I guess that's something I can talk about.
It could be a valuable thing to think about. I totally agree. Okay, we're going to keep going then. I'm going to skip over this next one to one of my favorite questions. What are you supposed to do but don't? What aren't you supposed to do but do anyway? What do you not know now that you will know someday? What do you know now but won't know when you're older? This is the rebel question. Y'all got any answers for it? Okay, we could skip over that if you don't have any rebellious answers. Going once, going twice? Going chicken soup with rice? Okay. Here's one I'd love to hear a few answers about, because I think it's also one that often yields results in these classes. If you, as I often do, find yourself at 2 a.m. reading Wikipedia articles or Tumblr posts or Facebook garbage, what are these articles about? Or what other site do you happen to be on? And why are these things so important to you that you'll read about them well into the night at the expense of your beauty sleep? I can answer this question for myself. Oh, wonderful, David. What's your answer? What do you do, David? What do you find yourself up to? Is it Wikipedia or is it something else? Do you find yourself reading XKCD comics about physics concepts that I don't understand? If you can narrow down to some specific kind of interest, it will help in terms of fashioning a story around it. Is there something in particular that you have found yourself reading about at 2 a.m. that we'd go, that's crazy, what the hell? Okay. In what respect? A story of a police officer. What do you mean? Okay. All right. You read a story about a police officer who arrested somebody driving along the highway in a tractor very late at night. I thought you were allowed to drive a tractor on. Is it that you're not allowed to drive tractors on freeways? That they're only allowed on surface streets? um. Okay, David. What did it make you think of? What did it did it spur some idea in your head or perspective or opinion? I know what it would make me think. It would make me wonder about how different it must be to live in the rural parts of this country. Because if I saw a tractor without headlights screaming down the road on 85 or 280, I'd be really confused. Those are my nearby San Jose highways. What did it make you think? Fair enough. Okay, we can wrap that there. All right. So it's 6:20. There are, of course, more questions on this page. I would compel all of you to try and answer as many of them as you can on your own time. It will do you good in the long run because as much as of this stuff you have, the more of the stuff that you have filled out, the more raw material you'll have to work from, the more of a feeling of having something to fall back on and to develop. I can only speak for myself in this respect and the students I've had in the past, but I know that there are a lot of people who struggle with the blank page syndrome, and it seems like once there's something to be reacting to, it's a lot less scary. So I'm going to ask, please go through and look at the rest of these questions. Answer the ones that mean something to you. Forget about the ones that don't. And when we meet Wednesday, I want all of you to come in. Pardon me, sorry. I want you all to come in with something. Now, we have 10 minutes. Do any of you feel like... Yeah, Garrett, please, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Oh, that is me turning around. Sure. That's very interesting. What's the Falcon Heavy? I'm familiar with SpaceX, but I don't know what that particular thing is. Nice. Is it part of their intent to like colonize the moon or colonize Mars? Like it's the sort of rocket that you would use to carry a lot of people, or something else? It's a stepping stone. Okay. What are your feelings about that? Do you have strong feelings about SpaceX and their efforts to make other celestial bodies inhabitable? Okay. Garrett, is there it'd be really cool. It'd be cool if they were able to make space travel and colonization economical. I'm really interested to see what happens in the next 50 years. And Garrett, I should tell you explicitly, there are a couple of colleges that frequently ask questions about what do you think is the most important technological innovation to be made in the next 50 years. And this would be a really interesting answer to that question. You could talk quite a bit about this idea of either talking about space travel and SpaceX or talking about artificial intelligence. Either could be really effective answers. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to hear. David, how's our world messed up and how would you fix it? Huh. Yeah, that makes good sense. What are the problems of consumerism and technology? How would you frame that problem? I think that's true. I think that's a wise observation. There's a stand-up routine that I can't technically recommend because there's a little bit off-color language in it, but it's by George Carlin, and he talks a lot about how particularly in America, we allow the stuff we have to dictate the lives we lead. Like, why do we move from an apartment into a house? Because we need a place for our stuff. Why do we move from one house to a bigger house? Because we ran out of space for our stuff. And then when there isn't enough space in the house, we buy a storage facility, because God forbid if we had to throw out any of our stuff. And it's like, if we could all just learn to subsist on the things that we need and acquire the things that we need and get rid of the things that we don't, we wouldn't need a house that big. Yeah, that's a good point. And in fact, David, I have a fiction piece that I would love for you to read. I'm going to email it to you at the end of class today, but I think it'll mean a lot to you. It's basically a version of the Wall-E story, but it's written in like the 20s or 30s, maybe even earlier, and it completely predicts the future. It's kind of remarkable. I think it might mean something to you. Okay, we're a couple minutes short. I just want to open up the floor. First, I want to hear in the affirmative, do you feel ready to write something by Wednesday? Something that you're interested in. Just follow your nose. Please answer with a yes if you feel like you know what you can write about. If you're choosing between a few, that's fine. Good. Say yes if you know there's something you can write about. Ah, that is what I love to hear. That means we've had a really good session. Thank you so, so much. All right. Well, then I am going to send off that email to David. Does anyone have any questions? No, we're not. Eileen, sorry. Write about what you want to write about, because the Common App prompts, you always end up accidentally responding to one of them anyway. And in the very rare case where you have not, Common App also says feel free to write on a different topic of your choice if you want to. So I feel like often enough the Common App sends people down very rigorous and strict lines. Just write about what's important to you, and it will end up satisfying the Common App. Is that okay? Yeah, David, follow your gut, follow your instincts. A complete Common App will be pretty well structured and clean in terms of its cohesiveness. But if what you want to do for Wednesday is write a few stories about different topics and see where your head is taking you, take this time to brainstorm. This is the moment where everything is good. It's just starting to work the muscle. Whatever you do, I'll be happy to see it. Does anyone have any other questions before we move on? Before we call it a day for today? All right. Well, that seems to mean that that's everything. Thank you all so much for a really effective class. I'm really, really excited to be teaching you all throughout the summer. You all seem like such smart and dedicated folks. I'm really thrilled. This is what you need to do for next week. Or, excuse me, not next week. I'm used to saying next week, but for Wednesday, June 20th. Please read the materials, Essay on Essays, and the College Essay Parlay Code. Also read the sample college essays, My Dinner with Tanya, and What Makes a Great Draft Pick. Please write material for an It Exists draft. And complete the school list for me. That's my way of knowing where you're applying to, what you're looking for in the schools you're looking for. I will reiterate, as I've said a couple of times, I just want for you what you want. There will be no judgments about where you're applying. But if there are multiple people that are applying to the same place, then we may dedicate some of our efforts towards the end of the class toward looking at the same schools, because that could be helpful to all of you. I think, is there a quantity of how much to write for Wednesday? Write a couple hundred words. If you hit 300, that'd be lovely. If you hit 600 or 800, that'd be fantastic. I am always most concerned with quality and developing skills. So whatever is going to be most useful to you, this is your process, and I just want to make it as fun and effective for you as possible. 300 is fine. More than that is great. Okay. If we're all on the same page and there are no more questions, then I think we're going to call it a day. All right? Cool. Thank you all so much. Yeah, I'll see you Wednesday. Have a great evening. And happy writing. Good luck. I'm really excited to see what you bring.